Hello everyone, welcome to Whining On. I hope you've got your drinks ready. We have Chris Lynam here. I'll be honest, I know Chris from passing by on the festival circuit, seeing his smiling face, riding around on a bicycle, watching his shows. I'm a little bit in my circle of people a bit starstruck to see him here. The guy's a legend, a guy who has probably established a lot of the tropes that you see nowadays in our industry. Maybe you could describe yourself a bit better, Chris. Give yourself a little synopsis for people who might not know who you are. I know there's a couple of people maybe I went to school with who don't know who you are at this moment.
Very old. Old clown. I'm an old clown, been making people laugh since 1973. And it's
Would you say you've gained the descriptive note wizened? Are you wizened at this point?
I've got wizened bits. I've got bits that are more wizened than others.
Fair enough. And I'm sure if you check out on YouTube, you can find Chris Lynam's wizened bits floating around out there. So I heard this story from multiple people that you were the first guy to work Covent Garden. Covent Garden, in case you don't know, I know you fucking do, but I've got to say this anyway. In case you don't know, Covent Garden is a street performance square. It's a place in central London, in the West End. It's probably the most famous street performance space in the world. Really? It's been, I would say so, in my opinion. Maybe you disagree. You've probably travelled and seen more places than me. I've travelled around Europe a little bit. I've not got out. You know, I'm a fairly sedentary creature inside this city.
It is quite a special pitch, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the common kind of culture, from what I can see from the stories people tell that we have in modern festival circle shows, street performance shows, kind of was built out from the culture in Covent Garden in the 80s and the 90s. But I was born in 84. I started street performing post 2000s. Yeah. So I don't know that. I only know the stories. So this is why I'm looking forward to hearing from you so much. So maybe you want to start in the beginning. Were you the first guy there?
Yeah. I'll tell you my history with Covent Garden is when I first came to London. This is going to take. Have you got time? Because it's going to take a while.
We got time, mate. We got time. People are here to listen to us. Carry on.
Okay. So when I first came to London in 71, I ended up at a bunch of squats up in Somerstown, just below Camden. And I just had a train of thought and it just got lost.
So you're in the squat.
Andy, so I was, this long story, but anyway, I ended up with a house in one of 90 squats in Somerstown. And Andy and I used to cycle down to Covent Garden, and it was the market then. And we used to go at 6:30 in the morning because that's when the market would be closing up.
And you'd skip the veg.
The thrown away veg. Yeah. And we used to feed everyone for 5p a meal every day.
Do you know what's so nice about that is we did that as kids growing up in London, the same thing, 19, 20 in kind of squats, social centres going skipping. And it's so nice to see that back in the 70s, is this?
Yeah, 71.
In the 70s, like the similar thing was going on. You still had the arty kids going out, going to the vegetable markets. Now, new Covent Garden vegetable market in Stratford, I think it is where all the kids go. And instead of going in the evening, they go at 9 o'clock in the morning because it's a trade place. Yeah, how the world changes. So anyway,
so you go there. With Covent Garden. Then that all fell apart, and they moved the market to Nine Elms, which is where I think it is still. Nine Elms over in Vauxhall. And Covent Garden just got boarded up. So there was all these old warehouses that were empty. And then I came across this group of clowns around about the same time. So then 73, I started clowning, and Portobello Road was my pitch. I used to go there and play a bit in Camden Lock. It wasn't as big as it was then, Camden Lock.
Was that with the square with the balconies around?
No, it was the second square in. No, there weren't balconies there. No, it was.
Cool.
It was one. I used to actually end up in the canal quite often as part of his routine. It was my last show of the day, there was a bit where I'd end up in the canal. So and apparently you die from going in there. It's like really.
Well, I live in a canal, but I've been in all the time. You're fine.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
okay.
the human immune system is quite capable. Not that we
Yeah.
should speak of that too much now. It was Camden the same as it was now. That it was kind of a place for strange
No.
artisty kind of. No,
No. It was working class place. It was the pubs were all. No, Camden was working class, man. It wasn't an arty place at all. I
no,
mean,
it was
there
geezers.
was quite a lot of squats there, so there was a lot of us kind of people. That
Yeah.
kind, which I suppose is the same as what Hackney became. Yeah, it was more an offshoot from the whole hippies thing.
Well, we can talk more about the progression of the town because I have a lot to say about that after. But so you're working in Camden, you're doing a bit of clowning, bit of play, and Covent Garden's got boarded up, and
Kings Road I used to play in as well. And so, and what I used to do is because I'd work off my bicycle, and I had a little trailer, and around about then I had a dog as well, so I used to work a dog.
Yeah.
And so I used to do a couple of gigs here, do a couple in Portobello Road, and then cycle around looking for another pitch. And I came upon the main square at Covent Garden, and there were just a few people walking around. I went, wow, this is a nice spot. And the Punch and Judy was open. And so a few people used to come and because Portobello was always on a Saturday. So that's when the only day you could work Portobello was so a bit on Friday sometimes, but Saturday. So
the same as it is now, it's when you get that bulk of people being drawn through the area.
Yeah. And so there were some people in the pub, and I thought, I'll just knock one off. That was really good. Built up a crowd there, but there were no shops there at all. The builders were still tarting it all up, because just slightly prior to that, about these bunch of clowns that I knew had been offered a warehouse there for £1,000 a year rent.
Wow! Yeah, imagine that now. Imagine.
I know. So so I just started doing that, and then I think I probably had 3 or 4 months just on my own because it was such a lucrative pitch and so much fun, so perfect. I started going there all the time.
And who are you drawing then? So there's no shops there. There's no tourist fall there.
No, well,
who's hanging out in the area?
Unfortunately, I didn't stop and ask them where they're from, what's your job, what do you do, and all that.
That kind of hack wasn't formed yet.
No.
And but would you say just your imagination is workers, people who live in the area, people who are just wandering around central London, seeing what's going on?
Yeah. There's quite a lot of Peabody houses around there, and Peabody flats. So there was quite a lot of and quite a few council flats around.
Yes, there's people looking for what to do,
Yeah, and the fact that there was that pub there, which had that was part of the. I think it might still be there, in fact, because Covent Garden itself had a history of street performance. The first ever record of Punch and Judy. I'm not saying the first Punch and Judy show, but Pete wrote about Punch and Judy being in that area. And in the early years, soon after, probably about 2 years after I'd started playing there, a couple of people, maybe 3 years, a bunch of people came in calling themselves alternative arts. That was it.
Okay, they came to manage the place.
Yeah, and they kind of messed it up. Really, it was working really well before. I mean, people. In fact, I've just been making some notes earlier, reminiscing about the people who came soon after I'd started. And John McKenna had a great act called Sid Rasputin. He would be in a wetsuit with flippers and goggles and shit, and mess around with doing stuff with water. Oh, it was hilarious. Tim Batt was a juggler. Cotton McAloon, I think he started around about then, and he's a juggler. He was like 16 years old or something. Tim Batt, Mac McDonald, the human jukebox. So he had a whole bunch of box things, and people would come up to him. And I mean, it wasn't the same as it is now, where, you got to be off in 10 minutes. You've only got a half-hour slot or 40 minutes, whatever it is. Let's just go on and do it.
You could do as long as you wanted.
Yeah. In fact, when I started...
Well, this is...
The only other act that I saw that used to play in Portobello, and soon after I started, they used to come there, and they were proper old school variety act. I used to call them the Chain Gang, and there were two of them.
Okay.
Real, and I mean, I was young. I was like 73. Yeah, 70. I was 20. So, and these guys must have been in their late 40s and 50s. Chain Gang, and I think they'd been doing it a long time. So they were proper East End London.
Yeah.
And they had a mailbag, and used to do that and be in really filthy underwear and vest kind of thing.
And was it stale filthy or was it really filthy?
Yeah, filthy.
Yeah. Okay.
Not filthy like no, they were just dirty old men, and alcoholics, you know.
Yeah.
And their show only lasted about 10 minutes, and they'd go, oh no, they'd sit on it and sit on the pitch until they got enough for a session in the pub, and then
fuck off.
Yeah.
I like to see some acts like that. This is one of the downsides of street performance becoming this loved and respected piece of style of performance, and something that's a lot more accessible, it seems, now than it was before. You know, you can have the right pens and go and do street shows by filling out the right pieces of paper. Whereas it seems in the oldie day, it was kind of people who'd wander on the street and think like, you know, what the fuck am I going to do? I'm not together with a lot of other things. I'm trying to do different kind of stuff. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
No.
So you've got a big thing with people on the street now. You get kids who've gone to school. They've been schooled in the circuit to go out and do street shows. You've got people who, big time. A lot of the younger phase of street performers now are circus-trained street performers. And they come out with, I describe it as the right colour pens. They've got their boxes organised. Everything is put in the right place. They write down every hat they do. They treat it like a real job, you know, a real profession. And they keep data and analytics and all this kind of stuff to study that as a profession. And I don't know if that exist back in the day, you know, because it seems like there was lots of people going around doing stuff, or at least some people around London doing stuff at the time of the birth of Covent Garden. Did you have people who were jobby street performers, as I described them?
No. I mean, quite soon, a lot of the European and world, because I had a world circuit that I used to do pretty early on, were sort of juggler-based acts, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the same jugglers and magicians kind of do quite a bit of trick swapping and are you doing that bit? Okay, I'll do that bit. You know. So, but the clowns, you know, like Mac McDonald was a clown, you know, but his act was human jukebox, and he'd wait for somebody to walk up and put a coin in his cardboard box slot and request one of 10 songs there. And then he'd flip open the flaps and go, do the song, and close the flaps and wait for the next one. And, you know, because he was a good performer. And what's the other guy? Phil Herbert. I mean,
so how many of you was on pitch queuing up every day? You're turning up to Covent, you want to do a show. Is there a like we turn up at 9 o'clock in the morning thing? Is it people rolling through the day and people are hanging around at the back of the pitch?
No, in the early days, you'd show up when you wanted to work. And it'd be pointless getting there before 12 or 1, especially the weekends you could come at 10, 11.
And were people queuing?
No, not like that. You know, there'd be, after a couple of years, there were like 5 or 6 acts waiting. And people would space it out during the day. And so I can't think if there were any other pitches, actually. You know, I don't think the rest of
Covent Garden Square worked?
No,
because I've seen images in the 60s of people doing stuff, but you know, any old place gets worked at some point. Even the smallest market town gets worked at some point. Doesn't mean there's a repeated thing. You know what I mean?
The police used to stop you there. I think the only thing, because it's got a particular kind of political jurisdiction, Covent Garden, that it never, you know, who owns what bit. So the police wouldn't. Yeah. The police, actually, they stopped me a couple of times at night there. I used to have a great routine, which if there's more time, reminded me to tell you about the turning off the light routine at night for doing my fire act. Hilarious.
Yeah.
And occasionally the police would say, "Oh, a sound thing at about 11 o'clock, you'd have to stop."
Which isn't completely unreasonable if you're making lots of noise.
No,
If you're not making lots
the
of
only
noise,
other guy working the West End was there was a tap dancer. Again, he was really old school, and he used to have a wind-up gramophone, and he'd work the theatre cues and the cinema cues.
he was an actual organ grinder.
Yeah, no, but he was a tap dancer, and he used to tap dance to a wind-up gramophone. You know, the 78 record ones with a little.
And that's in the 70s. Yeah, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, but there was no other acts who did anywhere except Covent Garden, and like I said, I probably had about I would have thought 6 months with just me before anyone else.
Well, I've opened up a lot of pitches. One of the things I've kind of really set myself as doing is I'll go to places where the police or security going and saying go, and I'll look at the law and I'll chew the fat with them and try and argue the places. So I've had the experience, and there was a guy called, his nickname is Evil Paul. Everyone who knows him will know who I'm talking about. Walked up to me in Trafalgar one day, and I'd spent about 6 months there, just like you described it, on my own, no one else working there. You had this beautiful thing when you were doing shows that you were something special. You know, this thing doesn't usually happen here. So when something's going on, people look as if it's got its own little intrigue just initially by something happening. And Paul turned around to me, he said, make the most of it. It won't last forever. And I was young and I was like, yeah, whatever, you know, going to the bar all night, everything else. And sure enough, he was right. You know, within a couple of years, there was 12 statues floating around. There was 3 or 4 or 5 people queuing up. There was musicians. I think it's a really good example of performers managing to shoulder barge and figure out how to use the space together, which I really like. But I think people know about that anyway. What's more interesting is Covent Garden. So you've got to the point where you've got the queue. People are kind of queuing. Is there a community there? Are people tight, or are they kind of nods and hellos? And
yeah, it was all good mates and very supportive of each other. And yeah, no, it was really good atmosphere.
Yeah, have you got any standout stories of that time? Anything that really holds in the memory?
Oh man, there's loads. And you know what? There was a photographer in the early days called Bill. Somebody, he was quite an old bloke then, and he took such great photos of us. Oh my God, really good photos. He's got one, and I had it in my in my photo album thing for years. Someone's nicked it. Me running, because I used to improv a lot, and the photo was me with a kid just about to be thrown into the dustbin on Covent Garden, and it's just a priceless pic. So that, you know, there were those kind of things happening all the time, just improv.
Yeah, because and this is, to be honest, this
one
is
of the first following people. You know,
this is some of my favorite. When I've watched you work, this is the thing I really enjoy watching more than anything is the improv, because you can see the cogs turning, and I attempt to do not similar hackish taking it, but I attempt to be improv-y and playing with what's going on in the moment. Try and use that street clown buffoon kind of angle to play. And so to see someone who's sharp, and some of the stuff you do, you can tell you deliver it with confidence, so you get away with it. But most of the other people, especially the performers, look around at each other like amazed that you'd write a routine where you put a gun to a kid's head and say, everyone applaud, otherwise the kid gets it. You know, really beautiful stuff. I
know, but
I heard a story.
In translation, that is like, whoa, a gun, a kid. You know, it doesn't work. But in live, when you see that bit live, it's totally. You can tell that it's not serious, but
of course, you know. I think there's a couple of things that go on in these moments where you do stuff that would seem far harsher than it actually should. I've got a joke I repeated a few times. I won't probably do it in any more shows because it's going to seem like I'm trying to sell one fucking old crap joke. But I turn around to a guy with his kid and I go, "Oh, Dave, how you doing? Making the most of the lad? You only get to see him 2 days a week. Now you should." And the inference is horrible. If you said that and it was real, and it's not the same thing, but it's this thing of suspension of disbelief. People allow themselves to engage with the fantasy. The fantasy is you're going to shoot the kid, you're this crazy maniac guy, but there's still this understanding that it's farcical. There's a farce going on. You can do things that are taboo and do things that are dangerous and outlandish. And usually socially, if people imagine themselves doing it, it's something you would never be able to do. You'd scare people, you make people feel horrified, people run, all these other kind of stuff. But within this bubble, within this little farcical bubble you create, you can do these things. You can play, you can push the limits, you can test within the nonsense how people feel about stuff, which I think is great, you know?
I'll tell you about this the switching off the light routine. So,
yeah, please do.
And just to the side of Covent Garden, there's the corner of King Street. Just around the corner, it's still there. There's this beautiful old light on the second or third floor, I think, up on the corner of the building into the churchyard. And so at night, that was the only light that there is in the square.
Yeah.
The only good light. So I used to gig there after 9, 10 o'clock. I'd get 2 or 3 shows in there and do the striptease, split arse, Victorian bloomers thing, show my ass. And then go, oh, I'm going to do fire eating. That's a bit bright. Yeah. So, oh, there's the light. So, and it was a tramp character in those days. I had this dirty old mat thing. So I'd climb up the railings and up, slightly balance on that, up onto the staircase and up the 2 flights to put my coat over the light. So it was a bit darker for the flame, you know, just silly for the business. Which,
but it's already, that's something which people wouldn't usually do. You know, it's abnormal. It's something, you know.
And because I'm going up with split arse bloomers, so there's lots of that. Oh, look, there's his bum again kind of jokes.
Yeah.
So, you know, great.
Complex humour,
yeah. It's a nice little bit of business. Well, then, and that's what upset the police, was like, oh, you know, this is advocating climbing up a building into a building. Or so they kept
saying
trying
a bad
to stop
example.
And so I had quite a few good routines, because if police came into my show, it was all that they tended not to do it more than once, because you know, if you've got a crowd of people there, that I don't know. Same thing. I had a way with not being arrested, and they were terrified of being made to be laughing stock.
This is a thing, and I think if you do, and I made an effort, and I've said this multiple times. I had Brian Reed. You know Brian Reed?
Yeah.
He turned around to me when I was performing maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and basically called me out. He said, "This fucking hack. You know, all these lines are stolen. You've taken them from other people, because there's been this great wealth of material that's been developed by people like yourself and many other people over the years that has gone into this huge kind of idea sphere of street performance, where people can drop in and they pull things out and they become more of a curator of shows as opposed to a creator, you know." And I'm losing my train of thought now. I'm halfway down a bottle of wine. So when he turned around and told me that, I had to sit and I had to go, and I just took a tennis racket out because I needed the fucking hook. I was shy. I was a bit embarrassed just chatting for no reason. So I took the tennis racket as a hook to say, I will do this, and then try and spend 40 minutes fucking around. And I think that's something which really helped when the police come in, because you're dealing with people who aren't always going to be nice with you. There is sometimes going to be conflict, and you learn different ways and mechanisms of dealing with that conflict. Either you make people feel better, or, you know, I've had moments where I've turned around to people where they are being a complete twat, and I'll quietly say to them, "Go on, show everyone how much of a dickhead you are," because things don't always have to be lovely. You know, it doesn't always have to be presented as, especially when you work with the public, that everyone's a nice person, because everyone isn't a nice person in certain moments, you know. And I think all that stuff helps when you come to the conflict in the show. When police come in or something else comes in like this, you don't have to drop script and go, right, you know, I'm this different human. The character lives on through the conflict. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm talking too much. We should be listening to you, you know. So you've doing the show, you've got the light on and off show. You're in there, you've climbed up the wall, you've put the thing on, police come in sometimes.
Yeah, and then the police arranged for that light to be switched off. So that I stole my gag. And it was like that for years, you know, when I still kept working Covent Garden. I was like, oh, God, okay. God. And funny enough, it affected the pitch, because without that light shining, that wasn't a spot anymore. So
people could be so petty.
Yeah. Well, no, there was still light from the Punch and Judy. Was still a kind of. It still didn't have the intimacy of that nice. It was very Victorian kind of atmosphere, that old light there.
Yeah. So when did Covent Garden become closer to the Covent Garden we know today, where it's accepted that people go there to see street shows? And it's almost like it's become somewhat of a cultural tenant in Britain, that Covent Garden is a place where you can go and see culture on the street.
Well, it was kind of the alternative arts. There was a woman called Maggie Pinhorn. Now, she was connected to some fringe theatre company. I forget what they were called. And her bloke was a Punch and Judy bloke. And they quite soon, probably in the mid 76, 77, somewhere around there, decided, okay, because this was the first Punch and Judy place and her bloke was a Punch and Judy bloke, we'll have a festival there, the Punch and Judy Festival. And it was great. It was a really good event. I used to come and play there, but it was mostly Punch and Judy booths and everything. And I used to I was quite good at ducking and diving, slipping one in.
Slinking between. Yeah. And so were you officially invited there? Was it a nudge and a wink, see what you can get away with?
No, after a couple of years. Because I was
so I assume the management was a bit prudish about the people who'd established this cultural identity for the place to begin with.
No, and so for the festival but then it was very friendly kind of situation. I mean, but Maggie Pinhorn was more of a bureaucrat, and she knew how to get in with councils and arts councils and all that.
Funding, permits, blah, blah, blah.
Because funding was, the Fringe Theatre was very well funded in those days. Incubus, Hidden Grin, Lumiere and Son. There were some great People Show. I mean, People Show were phenomenal.
What were the People Show? Would you like to describe them a little bit?
Well, they were one of the Fringe Theatre. They were amazing. I don't quite know which year they started. I can find out probably. But anyway, they they were.
What was the routine? Were they comedians? Was it theatre? Was it performance art?
It was more performance art, theatre, clowning kind of.
Are they playing for laughs there, or does it have occasional laughs? No,
occasional laughs.
Yeah. I saw.
Yeah, go on.
One of the things that surprised me when I went around some of the European performance festivals, rather than say like the Edinburgh Fringe, was that you do see these troupes doing these beautiful pieces of street theatre work that you'd never see on a street pitch. That we'd see nowadays.
Well, the French get funded for that kind of stuff, so so that's why they can afford to have 10 people in a group going, and let's spend 10 grand on costumes, and we can have because they get funded for it. I mean, it's worth going to Chalon and Aurillac, those kind of festivals, just to see what has come out of
definitely
having funding on the street.
Having a well-funded, having culture being well-funded within your society. I talked to Guy Collins earlier, a couple of days ago, and Guy Collins said one of the reasons he got into street performance was going to Aurillac and seeing people doing shows there.
Yeah.
It's got a great heritage.
Yeah.
So do you think street performance suffers in Britain from having to be self-funded? Do you think we'd have a better, healthier street performance circuit if we had, for example, people doing the arts? If you could prove doing the arts like in France, then you get kind of like what Labour tried in the 90s, an artist's benefit.
That's quite an interesting discussion. I mean, I'm not smart enough to really get into that, but I mean, it does. I don't even bother going to Covent Garden much anymore because I'm just fed up with seeing another juggler with a chainsaw, or street performance around the world has got. Okay, I mean,
it's got a hack.
After 10 minutes, you've got to start talking about money, and then you've got to get up high halfway through and keep talking about money all the way through, and and have some bit that you allude to. It's like a 10-minute show is stretched out to 40 minutes now, and it's just.
You're exactly right. As someone who is, I've desperately tried to scrabble my way back up a hill to get out of doing it. I began doing that. And I'm still to some extent doing it. I'd like to believe at some point I'm almost halfway to having an interesting piece of work. I'm a hybrid at this point. But you do see that what you'll have your set crowd build with your hack lines to build. You'll have your middle point, which is established in the finale, maybe some audience volunteer. work, and then you'll have a finale at the end with a hat line, and it is a formula. And I think, by the sounds of it, at least talking to people who were of your era, of the later 80s and the 90s, who talk about all the shows having character, being different.
Yeah.
It's a shame, you know, and maybe that is why Covent Garden now relies on tourists alone. We don't have English people, working class localers coming to the place to absorb culture, because everyone's on the fucking money. We got to make fucking money. There's no space for anything else, which is a shame.
No, there's a lot of people who make it a business. Now, you know, Jesus, Mark, what's his name? Rothman.
Mark Rothman had... Oh, he made a lot of money. I think he had one of the perfect Saturday night shows of his era, you know, without question. When I went and I ripped my hack show, I sat, you know, wide-eyed watching him on a Saturday night gather huge crowds out of nothing routine. And it was fun, and it is fun. If you haven't seen it before, it does. This is the problem, is mechanically, the hack shows work fucking amazing. You know, you'll sit and you'll watch through knowledge dies on the craft, and it's appalling. It's everything's expected. You can finish the line before the line's delivered. But then if you're watching with fresh eyes, people seem amazing. It's that weird battle. I talked with Byron about this a few days ago. You watch a show like Brian Reed's show, or like Pepe's show, or like other examples of people doing quite interesting work. Anthony Livingspace, my favourite show, to be honest, I've seen working on the street for a long, long time. It made me want to not do street shows watching his show, because you think, what an interesting piece of work. How the fuck have I been doing this for so long and still not quite get to be that fucking interesting? But yet these people get paid on average a lot less than people who do hack shit without any blips.
Yeah, there you go. Okay,
what are your thoughts on that?
More guns.
Is it? It's been a bugbear for a time. Is it something that's really drove you mad?
No. I mean, I was kind of moving off the street in the early 90s, you know, so I was getting quite a lot of indoor gigs and stuff.
Yeah.
So
if you had to wave your magic wand, would you change? What would you try and change about it? How would you address the problem if you were the fascist dictator of street performer land?
No. You just got. In fact, funnily enough, because my career has been kind of drying up, really, I'm finding it more and more difficult to get gigs now. For quite a few years, I've been promising myself that I want to get back on the street, because it was the wealthiest and freest time of my life. And
I would love to see you on the street. I would love to see you work again. I saw you work a few years. Well, I say a few years ago. I think it's 6 or 7 years ago now in Covent Garden with Mattress Circus.
Oh yeah. Los Caramba.
Yeah, and I saw little snippets of the bits, like I saw you make a human pyramid and gathering human beings and making this huge, intricate pile of humanity to hang your coat upon it and carry on with a piece of work. And it was beautiful. It was really fun to watch this huge build-up to a kind of farcical nothing, you know, this huge laugh on this massive dramatic moment that now I'm going to walk away and carry on work. It's beautiful. It's really great. I've got to try and not be too much of a fanboy within this interview, because I am a little bit of a fanboy, because it's not going to play amazingly well for everyone else here. So just, if you came to work back on the street, what would you be doing? Would you do the work you did? Would you be crazy, chaotic? Would you come to Covent Garden? Would you queue up? Would you try and find your own niche?
No, I'll go and find a new spot, I think. And to tell you the truth, I'm getting... my body's not working that well anymore. I wonder if I can make this happen live.
You can try if you hold the phone. I've tried this many times. It's not quite worked every time, but I'm willing to believe that it'll work this time. If you hold it close to the speaker.
This is JJ Waller, Captain JJ Waller at a Superman act. Hang on, let me try. Hello, JJ. Oh, let me see if I can get you on speaker. Hello.
Hiya.
How you doing?
Hey.
Yeah, doing well. How did your interview go?
Yeah, listen, I'm not sure if it's going to work. Can you hear him?
I can hear him perfectly. And maybe you need to keep the bottom of the phone close to the mic, but I can definitely hear you.
JJ, I'm on a so I'm on an interview with on Facebook about early days of Covent Garden.
Oh, right.
And
You haven't finished.
say again?
I thought you would have finished. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Don't worry, mate. It's all right.
We're trying to see if you can be heard as well.
You're being heard. He's being broadcast. Welcome to the internet. We're our massive live watching audience.
You can hear me or not?
Hang on.
1 2 1 2.
JJ, it's not working. I'll tell you why. Because he can't hear you, but I can. I'll phone you back in a little while.
I can hear you.
Okay, bye.
You shameless liar to get out of an awkward situation. I saw that.
No,
I
because
saw that, Chris.
No, he can't hear you, and so you were talking over each other.
I understand. Fair enough. So we're talking about creativity on the street. If you was a fascist dictator of Showland, you could waive a rule or a situation to try and address the hackishness that's kind of become the norm within the industry. What would you do?
So I wasn't listening. What?
If we're going to give you all control, if you became the king of street performance and you were to look at the world of street performance now and you wanted to make an adjustment, make some kind of change that would counteract the hackish, kind of system-based performance that you see pervasively now, what would you do?
Oh, mate, you can't push people into doing, all you can do is be your own creator, and it's so, yes, I've got a kind of legendary status just through, but mostly probably because I'm one of the longest people who've been doing it. I mean, there's not many people who've been doing it 46 years,
No, but also as well, let me tell you, as someone who really looks at the work, you're great. You're brilliant at what you do.
So,
but
you have to lead by example, and I mean, there's a lot of people. I quite often, I don't see much street performance, but even in the comedy world, on stage in the comedy clubs and stuff, I see my routines and my routines stroke lines showing up all the time, so it used to piss me off a lot. Now it's kind of a, what's the word? Now I see it as a kind of
compliment.
Kind of respect. Yeah, compliment. That's the word.
Yeah.
So people, it's a good line or it's a good routine. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things like banger up the bum.
Am I right in thinking?
Sorry?
If I'm correct, back in the day, if somebody would have walked out on pitch and hacked up somebody else's show, then there would have been problems from this. Am I right in thinking that?
And did what?
So say you're in Covent Garden, it's the 80s, it's the kind of the boom of the Covent Garden culture there, the creative culture there. I walk on pitch and I hack up somebody's show there. I copy somebody's show, hack up. I copy it. And I go out there and I copy bits and I copy whole bits of routines, and it's obvious that I'm emulating somebody else.
Yeah.
Would there have been consequences for that?
It wouldn't happen.
Due to mutual respect, or?
Yeah, because we were all mates, so you wouldn't do that. And, if it did happen, then you'd go, oh, this is blah, blah's line, or, or you'd point it out. There was a lot more, there was camaraderie, so it just wouldn't happen.
I heard stories of people going into shows and going, you stole that, stop it now. Would this happen?
I never saw that.
No, okay, fair enough. I'm just interested at the pressures. Was it that everyone was doing their own things because it was new, and because people were discovering what worked and really experimenting the medium, or was there a social pressure which kept people doing their own shit and thinking like that? I'm trying to figure out in my brain what's different now apart from the collective wealth of material.
Well, I mean, okay, take jugglers or magicians as the example for that, because that's got limited, clowns. We've got anything. We can be a brain surgeon or a prime minister or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
We have our limitations aren't as we've got much broader spectrum to choose from. Whereas
Even the Queen farts.
well, magicians have got like, oh, I could do that bit, or I've got cards. You know, it's limited. And jugglers the same thing. You know, you can only throw certain amounts of things up. Sorry, hang on.
Lily's trying to record.
Babe, I'm in the middle of an interview. Sorry, she can.
There's nowhere to go. You could be.
Well, how long are we going to be?
How long can you stay for, buddy? We can stay as long or as short as you need. It's okay.
Another 5 or 10. 10 minutes.
Yeah, should we take it? Should we do 15 and take it to the hour? Is
Yeah,
that okay. Yeah,
15
cool.
more minutes.
A little window into Chris's home life there.
Yeah, no, what's happening? My daughter's a singer-songwriter, and she's recording right now. And I speak quite loudly because I'm deaf. And so
okay, fair enough.
Be quiet because she's.
And you're interrupting. You go, God, Dad, you're ruining my career.
Yeah, no.
So, I mean, I like talking about creativity and stuff. I particularly like talking with someone who was there at the beginning, because you've watched the development of street performance and perhaps the recession of circle acts as an artistic expressive medium. I'm very interested in that. I'm just trying to draw some more information from you before over about this, your perspective on the change in the arc and the way instead of Brian Reed tells me that in the 80s everyone had different work and everyone was very individual, and now there's not. I'm interested in the change for that.
Yeah, you know, I think it's quite an American kind of influence, really, an American way of, because New Orleans used to be one of my regular pitches. I used to go there every February for Mardi Gras, and I'd play New York on the way there. On the way back, March, because that was spring, and then I'd go to New York again in September, and the artists that I used to see in New Orleans, there weren't many of them. There were, but mainly magicians actually, and there was one clown who used to do balloon modeling with one of those fucking squeaky things.
Christian clowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those magicians were the same. I mean, there was one guy, Jim Cellini. You might or might not know about him. He's
very very unheard, unknown character in the field, I'm sure.
Fabulous guy, really lovely guy, and very original.
I'm right in thinking the Cups and Balls, which has kind of been given to Gazzo as the epicenter of that form of show. Cellini was the guy who popularized his Cups and Balls originally. He was the first guy before Gazzo.
No, he wasn't the first guy. No, Slidini taught him. No, it's an old. No, that goes back. You know, it's like Slava's coat routine. You know, there's hundreds of people who do that. The coat and hat or whatever. You know, no, the Cups and Balls is a standard routine, but Cellini's delivery and lines and tempo, and his lines. I mean, well, it's his own fault really, because towards the end of his life, his last 10, 15 years. That's what he did. He taught his act. I'm running a magic workshop, but you know, he was a street guy. He didn't really know much about magic, so he taught. It's
much a similar thing with Gazzo. No, Gazzo sold the DVD of his show, and then I think he went through a brief period of being slightly frustrated that his show verbatim was being performed around the world, because people watched that show on a DVD that was sold to them for £80 to buy. And now Gazzo is I think it was about £80. It's a magic show, so people literally bought the show. £80 is cheap. Let's be honest, for that show, I don't think anybody who paid £80 for that show and can do it successfully has lost out on money, without question.
Well, so what he sold it as that you could buy it, for you to do. Is that how he sold it, for you to do it?
Yeah, he basically sold it with a lie. He sold it. Yeah, exactly. He sold it as lines. These are the lines you can use. This is a structure. This is how it is. Bang, DVD. Obviously, put your own things into it, but this is the base for you to use. And I think that's the reason why when you go to a magic pitch anywhere in the world now, you will see the cups and balls with the Gazzo lines and that kind of whole shtick. And it was unfortunate for him to go back onto pitches and see that done everywhere. But I think Gazzo's done all right for me. He's the most hard-working performer I've seen. Whenever I go to festivals, the guy he's like some shinobi assassin of street performance. I walk down the road and he's at the top of the road. I walk to the bottom of the road, he's at the bottom of the road doing the show. How does this aging guy fucking do this?
And he's hobbling around using a walking stick. Oh my god.
Yeah. So when did Covent Garden get the focus? When did it become, what was the thing that, so you're saying the festival with creative arts and people to go to the festival, but if I'm right in believing, Covent Garden was, it kind of, from what people say, it was an epicenter of culture during the middle to late 80s. People were piling into the place every night to go and see culture.
I mean, listen, some of the gigs that I used to play to in the early days were, you time it for when the opera and the theatres come out, because there was traffic then. And so, but now you don't notice that traffic anymore because it's constant, the traffic.
Yeah. Well, not at the moment, obviously.
So,
So,
and I think it was alternative art and them turning they got the indoor pitch license. They managed to get that. That's the only good thing that they did, was got the indoor pitch. So they became the liaison between the Covent Garden management lot and the artists to get more.
They did what lots of good non-NGOs do, and they managed to wedge themselves in between two groups that need to communicate.
Yeah. I haven't kept up, but I think, from what I can gather, I think Mark Rothman did some quite good work about trying to stop the.
100%.
Yeah, so I'm not up to speed with what's actually gone down.
So what happened there?
There was some more misery recently, wasn't there?
So basically, what happened with Mark was that when Capco, the new guys, took it over from Scottish Widows, they attempted to license the pitch so that they would curate what happened on that pitch. And they went through a summer where they put on curated shows, these beautiful festival works. I watched one of them. People on large rubber stands who just go like this. And that's basically most of the show, is just this motion of them manipulating these rubber stands. Beautiful for a festival where you walk past it, you look at it and go, isn't that beautiful? And you fuck off. Terrible for a fucking street show. I literally watched Mark Rothman when that show was on, when they were packing down. Mark sat up beside it, forgot his music, forgot most of his equipment, and built a bigger edge than they had for the entire hour they were on, which was this kind of proof of purpose that street shows are good at working on the street. Festival shows, these particularly high, lordy, slow, artistic pieces, don't work on the street as well. They're not designed for the environment. So they were trying to make sure that they could book shows so they'd all be that. They'd all be these beautifully presented shows that they could put on their advertisement and they could sell as this high-end product. Because Capital and County's idea is they bought Covent Garden, they want to make everything 3 times expensive in terms of the rent price, and they can pass it on. They're still in the process of doing that. So what Mark did, and a number of other people at that time did, with the aid of people like Eddie Izzard, I think, was still kind of dropping in a little bit and trying to help in somewhat. They went to the council and they said, okay, well, we want to license the place. If they want to license the place, we've been here for that long. We're the performers that work here. There's a historical evidence that this has been going on for many, many years. We would like to be part of this license. And apparently the solicitor for Capital and County lost his shit in this council meeting, started swearing at the councillor, packed his stuff up, left the room like in some movie where the bad guy's lost. And the council guy turned around in the meeting and said to Mark and a number of other people, well, what we'll do is you will be joint licensees with Capital and County. And the beautiful thing about that was, really cool. And what the beautiful thing about that was that it wasn't a license that could be legally enforced. There was no legal framework for it. So, but it was still the motion that was taken. So for the following years now, the SPA has made all the decisions on what the performers do. And Covent Garden Capco management have kind of had to politely acquiesce to requests that are made from the performers majority of the time. And that's because of having this weird power imbalance where we are kind of accepted lawfully, but at the same time, there's no lawful authority mandating dating what we do. And the problem now is that
is there a committee or something? Is there a street performance committee? How does that work?
So you have right now, the way we're managing it is we have a Covent Garden SPA, and it's kind of a natural evolution of what I imagine you guys did, where you took votes if you wanted to make a decision about changing the way the pitch worked. Were you around? No, it was just people going to do their thing.
No, more and more. No, alternative. It was a bit of a piss off, actually. Alternative arts came in and kind of laid down the law in a way, saying, "Oh, it's going to be like this now. You have to queue up, and you have to come at 9 o'clock in the morning." And so, we'd have none of that. Sign up. It was all just show up. Okay, I'll wait till you're finished. Who's next? So we didn't write the shit down. It
was all just chatting and working out to each other.
It was all working well together.
Yeah, just being decent.
Yeah.
Well, we might see that again now, because what's going to happen this summer, Westminster Council are due to license performance throughout the borough. And so it will be unlawful to entertain, do comedy, do mime in the borough if you're not in a licensed pitch or a pitch which is noted as being self-managed. So they've left Trafalgar as a self-managed pitch, which means the performers can run their own business. The same with Covent Garden. Everywhere else in Westminster, it will be unlawful to perform without a license. So you can imagine, with there being 100 performers probably now in Westminster working weekly, you can imagine what Trafalgar Square is going to turn out to be. You're going to get 100 performers rushing in there, trying to fucking work together. And I'm sure there will be lots of decent people, lots of attempts to work together, but it'll be hard. It'll be very tough, because you're taking what you talked about, all these different kind of interesting acts you see all over the place. You see little curiosity acts. One of the things that made me really judge my kind of status as a street performer was seeing a guy who was obviously kind of a heroin addict singing into a traffic cone. And he did this, he must have done it every other day of the week for years. And I watched his craft develop. He got better at singing into a traffic cone, to the point where I stop on the street and I listen to him, and it's quite haunting. He's managed to develop this tonality to what he's doing. You're never going to see that soon, potentially, because everyone will have to have the right coloured pens. You'll have to be able to fill out the paperwork, and, I don't know if that's the future of our work. I hope that, hopefully you'll see people like yourself. Nothing gets the press up like seeing an OAP get arrested.
If I want to go and play in Covent Garden now, do I have to go and apply for a license? Do I?
No. So what you have to do to play in Covent Garden right now is you need to have 5 million public liability. I assume you're a member of equity, so you'll have that anyway. And then you can work, because other people have seen you work. The only thing you need to work in Covent Garden is for someone else to say, this guy's not dangerous, not racist, he's not going to attack people, and he's not going to do something dangerous that's going to hurt people. that's the bar.
Oh, really? You think that's true?
Yeah.
Not
racist. Say that one more time. I've got a text message coming through. Yeah, but this is the thing, when people use that phrase. There was a guy on the pitch the other day, and I say the other day, it was a few years ago, but I'll use the other day for this conversation. Yeah. And he basically did what I've done myself, which is he rebuilt a joke. He took a joke, which is when people look at their clothes or whatever, and they go, "Where are you from?" "China." "Ah, well, everything I own was made in China." Very quite common piece of line to be done. And he's rewrote it to say, everything made in China is fake. Even the babies are fake. And it's quite a harsh line. But people looked at it, they said clearly he's not intending to be nasty or horrible or racist. Maybe we should have a quiet chat with him, but nothing was actioned on for anything. I think it's still probably the most free place to go and present your culture. Yeah. As long as you can do a show and you're not hurting people, you're free to do kind of what you want to do, One of the interesting things, one of the few things never ever used, but within the license in Covent Garden, the license, the unofficial, unenforceable license that we agree with because people are fair with each other. It's just like before, but slightly different mechanism. One of the things is that you can't do political work. And the reason you can't do political work is because they wanted to get rid of the guys you were talking about for so many times. Alternative arts. I think when alternative arts left, the Covent Garden street performers kind of took over the mantle of running the pitch for a while. And one of their ways of the last fuck you to alternative arts was to say no political work here.
Oh, cool.
It's not cool, really. I mean, my show, I talk about capitalism, I talk about fascism, I talk about, there's a lot of politics in my work, but it's just interesting to see this echo of something in the license that's never used, never worked on, but comes from this response to something years ago that's no longer even viable, you know?
Mm.
So, Chris, just to finish off, when did you stop working in Covent Garden?
Oh, must have been early 90s, I think.
Okay, and so what was the pitch when you left? So we've
When
gone from
did
the
Eddie
beginning
Izzard,
to...
You know, when did Eddie Izzard come on?
When he came onto the television, came onto the pitch, I'm not sure. I think it was the late 80s, I think, but I'm literally just making bullshit up, essentially, hoping my intuition's correct.
He was doing a double act for a while, and then he started getting popular, and I was leaving. So, yeah, end of the 80s, early 90s, I was working less and less because I was getting...
You did a show, which I've watched a few times, a comedy show where there was a piece where it was snow, bigger snow, I'm going to be a piece of bird shit landing on top of you. That was 89, right? So was that the moment of the transition in 89?
Okay, yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. And so what was the pitch like when you left? Was it much like you've described the pitch being the build-up?
Oh, testing my memory there, mate. It was, I mean, yeah, it was, you know, in the early days, I think my record was doing 10 shows in a day there.
Wow. For people who work in Covent Garden right now, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You get one show a day.
It dropped down to 2, 3, 4. And yeah, like you're saying now, sometimes you don't even get one.
Yeah. I've gone in plenty of times, and we do the 9 o'clock morning draw, and you come last, and you're like, well, I mean, luckily for me, I'm adventurous, just like yourself. I don't treat street performance as something which is kind of, you know, magnetically locked into Covent Garden. You can go to other places, which is something I think which is potentially a downfall of a lot of people in Covent Garden now, is it got very centralised. But yeah, sometimes you don't get any work there at all now. It's so busy. You get 20 people in the draw, 30 people in the draw for that day.
Listen, mate, I'd like to talk to you some more about this because, you know, I'm serious about getting back on the street and with a different format. But I've run out of time. I've got to hand over to my singer-songwriter.
Yeah, very much. So very, very quickly, just to say this, thank you for sitting and chatting. In terms of talking about other pitches, I'm interested in the idea of opening another working-class cultural pitch and making a focus at doing that, trying to find the new Covent Garden. Because Covent Garden now is not for working-class people. So we can talk about that in the future. For now, Chris, thank you for sharing your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching now and then. From Whining On, goodbye.
Ciao, ciao. Happy days. Bye.
Bang on an hour, mate. Bang on. Thank you.